Folks, all this project stands in stark contrast to my predecessor. He always talked about infrastructure weak. 4 years of infrastructure week, but it failed. He failed. On my watch, instead of infrastructure week, America's having infrastructure decade. Decade. Over $1.3 billion. Trump just talks the talk. We walk the walk.
This is my video update on this Saturday afternoon, December the 9th. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with an update on the UAE resolution for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And this resolution actually called for an immediate ceasefire as well as humanitarian aid into Gaza. And there was a vote in the UN Security Council on this UAE resolution, which was introduced to the Security Council at the same time that Russian President Vladimir Putin visited the United Arab Emirates, and at the same time that the UN Secretary General Guterres invoked Article 99. Anyway, we've had a vote on this resolution, another resolution calling for ceasefire and humanitarian aid. And the vote was 13 in favor, 1 vote against, and 1 abstain. The UK voted abstain, and the US voted against. A tweet ex post from UN News. United States vetoes Security Council draft resolution that would have demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. So also a release of all hostages as well, unconditional release of all hostages. And there you can see the photo of the U.S. Representative to the United Nations, lifting his hand as the sole vote against this resolution. So there'll be more resolutions for calling for a ceasefire and humanitarian aid and the release of hostages. They'll continue to put these resolutions to the Security Council, and the U.S. will continue to be isolated. Even the U.K. cannot vote against. You know, the U.K. was pressured to vote against, along with the United States, that it didn't look like the U.S. was the only country in the Security Council voting against this resolution. But even the U.K. had to abstain. Pretty soon, the UK will also vote in favor, and it'll just be the United States, and it can't last for long. Sooner or later, the US is going to have to vote for one of these ceasefire humanitarian aid resolutions. And the reason that the US gave, once again, for voting against this resolution, that's the flag of Armenia right there, by the way. One of the reasons that it voted against this resolution, is because it said that there was no condemnation of Hamas as a terrorist organization or as a terrorist attack on October 7th. And so it said it could not vote for this ceasefire resolution. So look, the U.S. has maybe another month left that it can continue to vote against. Sooner or later, it's going to have to vote for one of these resolutions. And that's why Blinken, when he was in Israel, he basically told the Netanyahu administration, you've got maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks. And that's just about all the time that we can continue to be the only isolated country to be against a ceasefire and to be for this destruction, this bombing campaign in Gaza. And the latest reports are that the plan is to flood all of Gaza, flood the tunnels at least of Gaza with seawater. That is a plan that's being talked about. It's being discussed. I don't know if it's been implemented, but this is madness. This is crazy. But according to various reports, the Israeli Defense Forces, the Netanyahu government, they're talking about flooding the tunnels of Hamas, which is an extensive tunnel network, flooding it with sea water, which would effectively destroy all of Gaza. I mean, Gaza would just, I imagine, it would sink if you were to do that. Flooding Gaza would be a war crime, according to the Russian representative in the United Nations. If Israel is truly considering flooding the Hamas tunnels under Gaza with seawater, this would be a clear-cut atrocity. Russia's first deputy permanent representative to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, said at the Security Council meeting on Friday. I don't know what to say about this idea, this plan. I don't even know if it's a plan yet, but definitely it's being discussed. I imagine it's being seriously discussed. It leaves you speechless. Let me see if I've got some more statements here from the Russian representative to the United Nations. Here's a quote. In recent days, shocking information has spread about Israeli plans to flood underground structures in the Gaza Strip with seawater, Polyansky told the Security Council. According to publicly available information, the IDF has already built a system of pipes and pumps designed to pump seawater and is currently discussing with the United States the practical possibility of such flooding. Will there be enough water? Will the topography of the tunnels allow it? And so on. Such a step, if taken, would constitute a clear war crime. This is madness, man. It's absolute madness. So John Kirby, he was speaking to the media yesterday. A man whose title I can never remember. But he's there, and he's speaking to the media. Sometimes he cries, sometimes he doesn't cry. Sometimes he issues warnings, depends on the situation. But yesterday he said that the Houthis are pulling the trigger and Iran is providing the guns. Basically, he's calling for the United States to attack the Houthis because of the Houthis attacking U.S. ships in the region. And so Kirby is saying that the United States should attack the Houthis, or at least they have a right to attack the Houthis. And the Houthis are now being propped up by Iran. Everything always goes back to Iran, whether it's Hamas or Hezbollah, or the Houthis. It always, for the Biden White House, for the neocons, it's always that Iran. Iran is at the end of the road there. It's always Iran that all of this stuff leads back to, because for the neocons, this is the best opportunity that they have had to get a war with Iran, and they're not going to give it up. They are not going to give it up. I like Jack Posovic's tweet. Here's his reply. I always say tweet. His ex reply to the video from Lord Bebo of Kirby saying that the U.S. should go after the Houthis. Kind of saying that the U.S. should go after the Houthis, but saying that the Houthis are pulling the trigger and Iran is providing the guns. So Jack Posobiec says this. So like the U.S. and Ukraine, question mark? Well said. Well said from Mr. Posobiec. So let's talk about Project Ukraine. And let me read you a Twitter X post. I don't know if that's how you call it, but I'm going to try to say Twitter X post instead of a Twitter. You see, I said Twitter X post. I'm going to try to say X post instead of Twitter or tweet. I'm going to try to make the transition over to X lingo. But Donald Trump Jr. Here's what two posts from Donald Trump Jr. The first post that I'm going to read you is a reply to Colin Rugg, who put out a post about Tucker Carlson's post, where Tucker Carlson said that he has confirmation that Lloyd Austin told members of Congress that if they don't give money to the little man in a green sweatshirt in Kiev, if they don't give money to that guy, then it's going to be their sons and daughters and cousins and grandkids and dogs and cats and their entire family and all of their friends are going to be sent to fight the Russians. And Tucker Carlson said this is 100% confirmed, that Lloyd Austin made that threat, that warning, if you want to call it a warning or threat, to members of Congress. So here is what Donald Trump Jr. said in reply to the news about Austin. This is what he said. The first post. How about go F yourself? Echoing what Elon Musk said the other day, last week, is becoming a very common phrase I'm sensing from the, I don't know why everyone's honking here today. Becoming a very common phrase for the what are they? Are they the elite class? The America First free speech class? I don't know. Let's just say for a lot of the American ex Twitter celebrities, they're starting to say "go F yourself" a lot now. Anyway, he said, "Go F yourself. America doesn't need to keep funding an endless war with no path to victory. If NATO is worried about Russia encroaching I have no idea. I have no idea why they're honking. They're happy, I guess. Happy about something. Let's start over again. How about go F yourself? America doesn't need to keep funding an endless war with no path to victory. If NATO is worried about Russia encroaching on NATO, maybe they should be funding more of this. But as always, they let America do all the funding while they get virtually all the benefit. No more big wars, no more funding the military-industrial complex. For those of you who are idiots, Ukraine lost this war quite some time ago. We're just keeping them on life support with never-ending money. That's from Donald Trump Jr., and he didn't stop there. We have this post from the Don Jr. There are no serious people left that believe Ukraine is winning this war or that they even have a chance, unless, of course, they are on the military-industrial complex payroll. Everyone else understands that it's over, and all we are doing is continuing this nonsense and funding it indefinitely, is perpetuating the death of the poor men sent to the front lines as cannon fodder to keep the money train flowing. Enough is enough. So that's going to get the attention of a lot of people in Congress, in the Senate and the House. That is going to really grab their attention. Donald Trump Jr. tweeting, "Enough is enough. You have to be an idiot to believe that Ukraine can win this war, to not realize that Ukraine has lost this war." So you would think that that it's going to make things even more difficult for Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, to get Congress to approve the $61 billion for Project Ukraine. You would think that posts like this from Donald Trump Jr. would make it difficult for the $61 billion to be approved. And Bidenopoulos, he still has about 7 to 8 days to get approval of the $61 billion. It's not over yet. That vote from the other day, that's just the first vote. They're gonna try to get this passed before Congress takes a break for for the winter and then reconvenes in the new year. Well, it looks like the Republicans may actually approve the $61 billion. You wanted to find idiots, Donald Trump Jr.? Well, I think you might have a whole House and Senate full of idiots, at least on the Republican side, definitely on the Democrat side, but even on the Republican America First side, it looks like they may be about to approve the $61 billion. This is according to Reuters, because the Biden White House is saying that they're going to make big concessions on the southern border, like big concessions. And when they make these big concessions, what's going to happen? Well, the Republicans are either going to have to say, okay, Biden, you met us halfway with the border. We'll meet you with $61 billion to Ukraine. If the Republicans say no and they continue to block Ukraine, then you know that the Biden White House and the Democrats are going to say, you see, we gave them everything they wanted on the border. They refused the money to Zelensky. They refused the money to Zelensky, to Israel, to Taiwan, this whole $106 billion package. They refused to approve it. So when Zelensky collapses, it's the Republicans' fault. So you can see there's a lot of politics at play here, which is interesting, because 3 months ago there was never any politics involved when Project Ukraine was being talked about or was being funded. It was a blank check. Everyone approved it, and the money went to the Zelensky regime. So the fact that you do have this type of politics being played is bad news for the Zelensky regime. Definitely, this is going to be, whatever money is given to the Zelensky regime, it's going to be pretty much the last money that he's going to see from the United States of America. That would be my guess. But I think he is going to get the money, because the Republicans, they're good at folding. They're definitely good at giving ground to the Democrats, no doubt about it. So I think the Republicans, if it's not by December 15th, then by the new year, I think they're going to give Project Ukraine something. And that'll be it for the Zelensky regime. But we'll see. The Biden White House is not giving up on getting the money to Project Ukraine by the next week or two. So we'll see how this thing goes. But the neocons, they never give up on war. They, when it comes to war, the neocons never give up. Whether it's Iran, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Taiwan, China, and Project Ukraine, the neocons, they do not give up. And the neocons, they put out an article via Foreign Policy, which provides a roadmap for a Ukraine victory. Yeah, it says that Ukraine can win this thing, according to neocon thinking. You wanted idiots, Donald Trump Jr.? These are your idiots right here. You wanted idiots? There's a lot of idiots who still believe that that Project Ukraine can be saved. So the neocons, they put out an article with the title, "The Shortest Path to Victory in Ukraine Goes Through Crimea. The West Needs to Keep Its Nerve, Recognize the Stakes, and Support Kiev's Clearest Path to Victory." So I'm going to summarize this article, and I'm going to tell you what their path to victory is. It's a 3-step plan from the neocons. 3-step plan. The key is Crimea. That's the key. The key is Crimea. Crimea is the key to victory for the Zelensky regime. Now, step 1, let me remember here. Let me remember this article. Step 1 is you have to isolate Crimea. That's step 1. And how do you isolate Crimea? You destroy the Kerch Bridge. That's how you isolate Crimea. Destroy the Kerch Bridge, Crimea is isolated. And the neocons say that, they argue that Ukraine has hit the Kerch Bridge twice in the past. So they claim that Ukraine can absolutely isolate Crimea by taking out the Kerch Bridge. So no Kerch Bridge, no way for Russia to effectively supply Crimea. Now, if the neocons had been watching many videos from Brian Berletic at the New Atlas, Brian, if you're watching this videos, how many videos have you done explaining how even if they were to hit the Kerch Bridge and damage the Kerch Bridge to the point where it can't transport to Crimea, the Russians have a whole bunch of other options to supply Crimea, whether by boat, by plane. I mean, there's so many ways that the Russians can supply Crimea. They did it in the past before the Kerch Bridge, and Brian has done, I don't know, maybe a dozen videos talking about this. If the neocons would watch your video, then they would realize that step one does not isolate Crimea. But anyway, maybe we should send some of Brian's videos to the neocons so they could realize, the Foreign Policy magazine, so they could realize that taking out the Kerch Bridge, if it were to happen, does not isolate Crimea. But that's the first step in the plan. Step one, take out the Kerch Bridge. Step two is you hit all of Russia's military assets, all of their military facilities, naval bases, airfields in Crimea. That's step two. How do you do this? Well, one word: attackums. Attackums, yeah. Foreign policy says that the Biden White House needs to supply Ukraine with all of the attackums they have, hundreds of attackums. I think they say 50 or 100 attackums. Why stop at 100? 1,000 attackums, 2,000 attackums, and the good attackums, like the attackums that really do damage, right? All of the attackums need to be supplied to Ukraine, and then they use the attackums to take out all of Russia's military assets in Crimea, all of it. And they argue that Ukraine has been successful in damaging the Russian naval fleet, naval facilities in Crimea. And that's their argument. They say that Ukraine has been successful at hitting Russian naval assets, so they can absolutely, if they had the attackums, they could absolutely destroy all of Russia's naval assets in Crimea, as well as the airfields and all of the military assets in Crimea. So that's step number two. Attackums, hundreds of attackums, hit Crimea, isolate Crimea, then hit Crimea. And step number three is, this is where it gets wild. Step number three to winning the war is you hit inside of Russia. You hit all of Russia's military facilities around Crimea, like Russian mainland, Rostov, Krasnodar. You hit all of that. You attack all of Russia. It even says that you should attack. It even says that Ukraine should attack, along with the United States' help, should attack even the Caspian Sea to prevent Iran from getting supplies to Russia. They said that Ukraine should even go after assets, military assets, all the way to the Caspian Sea. Yeah, that's the plan. You attack Rostov, you attack Krasnodar, you attack it all. You attack everything in and around Crimea in the Russian mainland. And how do you do that? Well, attackums, but Taurus missiles. German Taurus missiles. And the Germans have been hesitant in providing Taurus missiles. Foreign policy says screw that. If the Biden White House calls up Olaf Scholz and threatens Olaf Scholz, then Olaf Scholz will give over the Taurus missiles. He hasn't been pushed hard enough by the Biden White House. So that's how you do it. That is how you do it. I think in the article they even talk about hitting Abkhazia, I think they say. One sec. Not only the Caspian Sea, let me see if I can pull it up here. One sec, here we go. Yeah, Abkhazia. Hit the naval base in Abkhazia as well. Russia's establishing a new naval base in Abkhazia, a Russian-occupied region of Georgia. Hit that as well. Yeah. So that's the plan. That's the plan. You know, the neocons, they come up with these amazing plans, but they never think about like the other side. They never think about Russia and Russia's capabilities and what Russia can do. They don't even think about the actual production, the economics and the military production of their side. It's just infinite. It's just a thousand ATACMS, just, you know, boom, 1,000 ATACMS. 1,000 Taurus missiles, boom. Get them to Ukraine, boom. It's like it's magic. It's all magic. Let's get 1,000 ATACMS. Tomorrow, let's send them to Ukraine. Day after tomorrow, 1,000 ATACMS into Crimea. That's like the neocon thinking. And they never think about Russia's response, Russia's defensive actions, and what Russia would do in response just if Ukraine took out the Kerch Bridge. They have a very short memory, neocons, a very short memory. Remember, was it the first time or the second time that Ukraine hit the Kerch Bridge? I'm not sure which time it was, but I remember the one time that they did hit the Kerch Bridge, and they did do significant damage, but the Russians fixed it. But I remember that the Russians hit Ukraine really, really hard, like hit the energy infrastructure really hard. I remember photos, videos of people in Kiev, like in lines outside of like internet cafes or establishments that still had internet, basically, that still had Wi-Fi, because Russia just, or electricity, because Russia just really hit Ukraine's grid very, very hard. And so what do you think Russia would do if, let's just say if, you hit Rostov? They still haven't understood that Russia's fighting this conflict as a special military operation. They haven't understood that Russia is only using 10 to 15% of their military power. They still haven't understood that. Of course, the article talks about the great Kherson counteroffensive and the Kharkiv counteroffensive and the siege of Kiev and the goat of Kiev and the ghost of Kiev and the Zaporozhye Avenger and all of these characters, all this cast of characters. They talk about all these great victories. They still haven't understood that Russia is fighting an SMO. It hasn't hit them yet. After a year and a half, 2 years, it hasn't hit them yet. But yeah, that's the plan. That's the neocon three-step plan to winning this conflict. And you know there's going to be people in Congress, Donald Trump Jr., if you're watching this video, there's going to be people in Congress that are actually going to buy into this. That's the reason that this article came out. This article is meant to be read by members of the House and of the Senate in order to convince them that this can be won. If we just do these three things, this can be won. So let's start with the 61 billion. Let's first get the 61 billion in place, and then, you know, let's start putting this plan into motion. The neocons, they never ever think about the other side. Never think about the other side. Being in a relationship with a neocon must be like awful. Can you imagine like dating a neocon? That must be awful. They never like really think about you. They never do anything for you. Nothing. They don't really care about you. Being in a relationship with the neocon must be the worst thing. Anyway, that's the article. Check it out. Read it. It's not too long. It's not too long of an article, but boy, is it a whole lot of delusion. A whole lot of delusion. So Ben Hodges, he tweeted, of course, Ben Hodges tweeted about this article. I think he's even mentioned in this article as a great military strategist. That's how delusional this article is. They actually bring up Ben Hodges' name in this article. I think they bring up Ben Hodges' name. I remember reading it as one of the people that talks about hitting Crimea. Yeah, they do. They do. Let me read you the paragraph. The new phase. In this new phase, this is the new phase, how to win the war. In this new phase, the West should consider bolder and more creative options for supporting Ukraine. Rather than search for off-ramps that don't exist, it should focus its efforts on moving Ukraine closer to victory with a standard focus on Crimea, which retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges has rightfully described as the war's decisive terrain. So you know when an article has to reference Ben Hodges, they should listen to Ben Hodges. You know that this plan is doomed from the get-go, because if there's one person on this planet who gets everything consistently wrong when it comes to this conflict, when it comes to anything in geopolitics, to be quite honest, if there's one person who's consistently wrong, like 10 out of 10 wrong, it's Ben Hodges. He gets everything wrong. I mean everything. And he put a post. I have such trouble, not to say a tweet. And he put up an X post saying Ukraine has already proven the concept that long precision strike can render Crimea untenable for Russian forces. 3 storm shadows hitting key targets in Sevastopol caused relocation of 1/3 of the Black Sea Fleet. Imagine if Ukraine had 50 or more ATACMS or Taurus. Yeah, just imagine if they had 150 ATACMS and Taurus. 350 ATACMS and Taurus. Imagine Ben Hodges. What an idiot. The Russians figured out the Storm Shadow missiles. They figured out the Storm Shadow missiles. If they haven't figured out the ATACMS, they'll figure out the ATACMS too. Anything that you throw at Russia, they'll figure it out. And anything that the collective West has in numbers, the Russians have in more numbers. 50 ATACMS, the Russians have 100 ATACMS. Once again, Brian brings up this point over and over and over again. Whatever numbers they throw at Russia, Russia has more. So you hit Russia with 50 ATACMS, the Russians are going to hit Ukraine with 60. 60, I believe, tornado is what the Russians would use, right? Would be tornado system. So that's Ben Hodges. So let's see here. Politico interviewed Elena Zalena. She's saying that without more aid, the world will simply let us die. That is what Elena Zalena said. It hurts us greatly to see the signs that the passionate willingness to help may fade. So they're bringing out Elena Zalena to make a plea for the 61 billion. They even brought out, what's her name? Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the Juan Guaido of Belarus. They even brought her out in an interview with, I believe it was with CNN, saying that if Ukraine doesn't get the 61 billion, then, all hope is lost for Belarus. That was what she said, basically. If Ukraine doesn't get 61 billion, then all hope for Belarus is lost. The European hope, the EU hope for Belarus is over. So they're getting very, very desperate. So the European Union, they were in China. Let's see, how am I doing on time here? All right, we'll wrap up this video. The EU, they were in China, and they had some demands of Xi Jinping as they visited Beijing. And let me read you what happened with Van der Crazy, Michelle, and Jungle Joseph. In Beijing, the EU wants China to help sanction Russia. The bloc has threatened to name and shame 13 companies that do business with Moscow. The EU may identify and possibly sanction more than a dozen companies based in China or providing Russia with goods that might be used in the Ukraine conflict. The bloc's leaders have told reporters in Beijing. Von der Leyen said she had urged Xi to prevent any attempts by Russia to undermine the impacts of sanctions. Michel handed the Chinese leader a list of 13 companies the bloc has accused of selling dual-use goods to Russia and asked him to immediately deal with the problem, according to Politico EU. We have identified a list of companies which are suspected to play a role in circumventing our sanctions, Michel told reporters after the summit. We sincerely hope that today we are heard, and then the appropriate action will be undertaken by China. If Beijing doesn't crack down on the companies, the EU might name and shame them, and the member states will have to decide what further action to be done, Michel said. The Chinese response to this was a no response. They didn't even respond to this threat. True. China didn't respond. China's response was, we hope for our relations to improve, and we hope to trade with the European Union, and that was pretty much their response. Actually, China did say that the EU did talk about trade imbalances and how the EU economy is hurting, and they're trying to blame China. And China did say that the problem that you have, European Union, with whatever trade imbalances that are going on, it's not our problem. It's your problem because you guys are the idiots that decided to sanction Russia. That's pretty much what China told the European Union. They said, don't blame us for your stupid decision to sanction Russia. And now that's causing all kinds of problems in your economy, in your member states' economies. So that was pretty much the response from China. But the threats about naming and shaming companies and even sanctioning Chinese companies because China is helping Russia, the Chinese didn't even respond to that. They said nothing. They're just like, whatever. Just go away. Run away now. That was pretty much the response. But, the European Union, from what I understand, they are going to sanction Russian diamonds in the next round of sanctions. The Russian diamond industry is going to be sanctioned, and that's going to hurt Belgium, Antwerp, big time, in a big way. The diamond sanctions. Belgium announced the next round of EU sanctions against Russia will forbid the import of diamonds from the country, something they long opposed. Coincidentally, this comes the day after India reopened its own diamond trade with Russia. You really couldn't make it up. Yeah? The EU sanctions hurt. It seems like they're actually aiming to hurt EU citizens more than Russia. That's what it seems like. But we also have word from The Guardian, by the way, that the EU is getting very close to releasing 10 billion euros that it owes to Hungary, that it owes to the Orban government. And they want to release this 10 billion in order to get Orban to vote yes for accession talks to begin with Ukraine. So we'll see what happens there. We'll find out next week if they do give the 10 billion to Orban, and if Hungary does say, okay, since you've given us 10 billion, which you owe us, which is rightfully, it's Hungary's. I mean, this is Hungary's money that the EU is trying to steal. If they actually do give the money to Hungary, then we'll see if Orban votes yes for EU accession talks to begin with Ukraine. Which the ironic part to all of this is that the EU is desperate to begin talks with Ukraine because this is the only victory that the EU can throw out there with this conflict with Russia. They can go out and say, well, we started accession talks with Ukraine, so the Putin loses, we win. That's all they've got. That is all they've got. But the irony is that these accession talks with Ukraine is going to actually destroy the European Union. Bringing Ukraine into the European Union actually destroys the European Union. So if I was Russia, if I was the Putin, being a judo master that he is, I would be like, yeah, absolutely bring Ukraine into the European Union. I mean, what easier, better way to destroy the European Union than bringing Ukraine into the Union? So let's do a couple of, let's wrap this video up. Let's do a quick couple of clown worlds, maybe pre-clown worlds, and then we'll get to a clown world. And how about Germany's military aid to Ukraine? They announced a new military package to Ukraine. And in this package, from what I understand, Germany's going to be giving the Zelensky regime 1,750 shells, 155 millimeter shells. That's going to last Ukraine like 5 minutes. That's what Germany's, along with other things, but 1,750 shells. I don't know, maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I've seen a whole bunch of reports saying that this is true. 1,750, 155 shells Germany's going to be giving to the Zelensky regime. And then we have this pre-clown world. MBS canceled the UK trip before welcoming Putin, according to the Financial Times. Senior British MPs have described the reported move as a snub on Riyadh's part. Saudi Arabia scrapped plans for Mohammed bin Salman to visit London earlier this month, days before he hosted Russian President Vladimir Putin in Riyadh, the Financial Times reported on Friday, citing UK government officials. Yeah, basically he was supposed to go to London on December 3rd, and this plan took months to plan out. MBS was going to go to London and I guess meet with Sunak and Lord Cameron, and Putin decided to come to town, and MBS said, yeah, whatever. No need to go to London. Why should he sit down with Sunak anyway? What is Sunak or Lord Cameron gonna tell MBS that's of importance, right? So MBS is like, Putin, Sunak, Putin, Sunak. Yeah, this is a pretty easy one to call. Oh boy! All right, let's do a clown world. And how about dancing queen Sanna Marin, one-time leader of Finland? She attended the Finnish Independence Day ball, dressed in the colors of Sweden, or maybe Ukraine, or maybe both. Maybe that was her statement. Sanna Marin certainly nailed the beautiful dress that makes a political statement look at yesterday's Finnish Independence Day ball. So now she works for like the Tony Blair War Criminal Foundation. That's not the name of Tony Blair's consulting company, but that is what it should be called. But that's who she works for now, is Tony Blair. Big surprise. That's her reward for bowing down to the globalist powers. And she attended this Finnish Independence Day ball, and she was dressed in the colors of, I think it's Sweden. I think she's making the case for Sweden to enter NATO. I guess that's the case that she's making with this stylish, stunning dress. But of course, she could be talking about Project Ukraine as well. Who knows? Who knows? Sanna Marin, dancing queen. All right, everybody, that's the video. The Duran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Rockfin, Twitter X, and go to the Duran shop. 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Take care.